Time stretched, not metaphorically. Current Master Zale could feel it dragging against his scales as erratic sparks cascaded down his elongated body. Each second took longer to pass than the one before, as if the universe was slowing down to ensure he experienced every agonizing moment. The humans hadn't lost these schematics. They had surrendered them, deliberately. What happens when the galaxy's apex predator realizes it has been playing with bait? The translation matrix had been humming with a quiet, confident vibration 3 cycles earlier, right before it spat out the first string of untranslatable human gibberish. Zale had ignored the anomaly then. Deep beneath the crushing pressures of the Talvine homeworld oceans, the primary weapons research facility pulsed with an unending current of raw power. Electrical energy ran directly through the thick, pressurized walls, feeding the station's massive grid and keeping the elongated Theta bioelectric bodies of the Talvine engineering staff comfortably charged in the frigid depths. Zale coiled his heavy serpentine form tightly around the primary observation console. He was the reigning current master, the uncompromising chief architect of destruction for a species that conquered entire star systems through overwhelming firepower. And today, despite his flawless record, he was deeply annoyed. A sharp, metallic buzz emanated from the translation matrix. This device was the pride of the Talvine Intelligence Division, an algorithmic marvel capable of breaking any syntax in the known universe. Yet, when fed the technical documents recovered from a passing human Earth Science Division vessel, it choked. Alien to human translation flowed flawlessly. Human to alien returned absolute gibberish. Endless rows of incomprehensible non-linguistic symbols flooded the bioluminescent displays, which meant the system was failing, or the humans were incredibly primitive. Zale assumed the latter. Ignore the broken text, Zale ordered his technicians, his bioelectric field snapping with tiny blue sparks of irritation. Focus on the physical materials sample they left behind. Through the thick observation glass, the testing chamber sat empty save for a single square of human-made plating. It looked completely dull, unimpressive. Zale signaled the technicians to power up their newest, most devastating directed energy prototype. The prototype fired. A blinding beam of concentrated plasma struck the human plating dead center. Instead of shattering, the metal rippled. Zale leaned closer to the thick observation glass as the armor's surface instantly transitioned from a rigid solid to a flowing liquid, actively absorbing the massive thermal shock of the blast. A fraction of a second later, it violently boiled into a localized gas, completely dispersing the kinetic and thermal energy before flawlessly reforming back into its original solid state. It was a self-sustaining phase change armor. Every physical transition soaked up the deadly impact, utilizing the energy of the attack to fuel its own regenerative cycle, rendering the Talvine's greatest and most expensive weapon entirely inert. Join us as we uncover just how deep the human deception goes. Zale's facial tendrils flared. He barked an order to fire again. Maximum yield. The beam struck with enough force to vaporize a heavy cruiser. The human plate liquefied, gassed, and solidified. Not a single scorch mark remained. How many times can it do that? Zale muttered, his body's natural illumination dimming in sheer disbelief. The junior technician, still wrestling with the translation matrix, managed to isolate a single footnote from the human document. The syntax was clunky but readable. "Current master," the technician whispered. "The human log says testing was suspended at 4,000 cycles." Zale felt a sudden chill. 4,000? Did the armor finally fail? "No, sir." The technician swallowed hard. "The footnote states the armor showed 0 degradation. The researchers just got bored." Bored. Zale coiled tighter around the command console. His bioelectric field flared into an agitated, blinding crimson. He demanded the senior cryptographers immediately strip the translation matrix of its standard linguistic protocols. If the machine's algorithm could not process the human text, they would tear the data apart and decode it manually. For 2 full planetary rotations, the underwater facility operated in a tense, suffocating silence. The weapons chief continuously fired the plasma prototype at the human plate, desperately hoping for a different result. The armor just drank the energy. It rippled, shifted, and hardened, absorbing their greatest destructive achievement as if it were a mild thermal current. Nothing. Finally, the lead cryptographer approached Zale's observation spire. Her electrical discharge was sluggish, practically sputtering out in the pressurized water. She did not bring a translated dictionary. She brought a dimensional physics rendering. The matrix had not failed. The humans just were not using words. Their technical documents were written entirely in a higher mathematical syntax. The gibberish consisted of equations so densely layered they described the molecular folding of matter in real time. They had not bothered to encrypt their most sensitive military secrets. The Talveen simply lacked the cognitive framework to comprehend the alphabet. A junior communications officer floated upward from the lower decks, clutching a diplomatic transcript from the original encounter. The officer's scales were completely dark, devoid of all biological charge. "Current master," the officer whispered, projecting the audio file from the human captain's departure. The human's voice echoed through the pressurized water column, casually polite and utterly devastating. "That was our science vessel. You don't want to meet our warships." And so, time stretched. The erratic sparks cascading down Zale's elongated spine finally ceased. His segment of the observation deck plunged into pitch blackness. The sensation of the universe slowing down anchored him to a single horrifying truth. The humans had not been careless. The drop of the technical schematics, the donation of the phase change armor sample, the polite diplomatic exchange, none of it was an accident. They had wanted the Talveen to try to decode the documents. They had wanted the apex predators of the sector to point their most devastating, state-of-the-art superweapon at a scrap of metal, and watch it do absolutely nothing. It was a calculated display of supreme dominance, masquerading as a gesture of scientific goodwill. They were showing the Talveen precisely where they stood in the galactic hierarchy. Zale stared through the thick glass at the testing chamber. The plasma cannon was overheating, whining as its cooling system struggled to keep up with the continuous futile firing. The human armor sat there, pristine and unbroken. It was a mirror reflecting the Talveen's absolute obsolescence. The apex predators were merely insects raging against a thunderstorm. He understood now that a war with Earth would not be a conflict. It would be a sanitation procedure. He drifted slowly toward the primary terminal. The translation matrix continued to hum softly in the quiet dark of the station. Endless rows of human mathematics scrolled across the bioluminescent display, perfectly legible and entirely incomprehensible. The golden light of the screen illuminated his lifeless scales, charting out the exact calculated architecture of their doom. Would you have realized the trap before it was too late? Tell us your thoughts below, and subscribe to our channel for more classified reports from the edge of the galaxy.